Okay. You said that there were lots of pledges that we heard on the Cancun conference, but you also said that the money has not been so far offered on the table. Is there a plan B maybe? If, let's say, the green gas emitters refuse to put their hand into their pocket and finance Africa's climate mitigation actions?
And I think that there is different, one of the things we discussed during our talk here on accessing the climate finance is that for the African to be much more proactive, because we have tendency to focus how to have access to the resources, while it's important for us to think ahead, because in all those type of issues that emerging, there is 3 sequences. One is setting the agenda, and then setting the agenda mean to look at what are the financial resources that are required, and where those resources should come from, and how those resources should be dispersed. That means agenda setting. And the second phase is the negotiation. The negotiation means to define different area, different criteria, and how those resources will be channeled. And then the third element is implementation. Unfortunately, in most of the cases in Africa, we are focusing on the implementation side. Okay. And also, there is an evidence it's very difficult to distinguish adaptation and development. They are related, and this is also one of the biggest problem or the challenge that Africa is facing. Adaptation related to development, and at the same time you have to make the difference between, because the finance of the climate is different from the finance of development. And if you are not making that distinction, it's very difficult to make your case. And this is the kind of dilemma. And then that means we need to do some homework in Africa. We have, let us take just one example, theoretical example. In Addis, it may be cold, but really the majority of the citizens in Addis are not taking any heating system. But if the system have changed, and then there is much more cooling period, it might be necessary to have a heating system, and that will be a new burden. And that has also implication on the energy supply. And that will add on the development, the planned development of the country. That is why we said that it's important to separate the two.
Exactly. That was what I was wondering when I saw the title, Accessing Climate Finance for Development in Africa. I was wondering specifically what type of development.
And then also another case is that, you know, in most of the African countries, particularly in the Sahel belt, and there is a problem of water. And then if it became, because of the impact of the climate, if it became drier, that means we need to invest on water supply systems. Investing water supply systems need additional resources, and that is why we need finance climate at the same time finance development. How can you foster development? How can you achieve your development without access to water? Another element is the agricultural sector. The limitation, because African agricultural system is based on rain-fed agricultural system. If it gets drier, we need to improve the water availability, the water supply for agricultural system. And all those different aspects requires investment, because those new investments are related to the climate. But we should have some investment on those in our classical development, but it became much more bigger with the climate. And that is why we need to make the distinction between the two and to make the linkages so that our development will become climate resilient development. And this is also why what we are trying to advocate within the ACPC is to take the development route, not looking at adaptation or looking at the mitigation, but development first as a first objective, the primary objective of the Africa. And then you bring the adaptation element in it to make your development climate resilient, and you bring in the mitigation element it to make it low carbon future.
Okay, good. By now we know that where the money will lie because we have defined the development section. But let's say there is the finance. And is Africa's institution capable of shouldering and allocating the money to the exact place, and have they set up a very transparent thing so that the money can be channeled to them?
But this is exactly why we had this conference here in Addis, and then we need to work hardly in order to make sure that all those different elements, because this is a new challenge. We need new type of institution. We need new type of mechanism in different countries. And this is why we have such, and this is also why ACPC has been set up.
I mean, now, okay, let me ask you one question, and that is, which institution will allocate the money? Is that UN? Is that World Bank? Is that IMF? How will it be channeled to pertinent government organs?
We are facing in the climate discussion a huge proliferation of funding sources, funding mechanism, from multilateral to bilateral. And one of the challenges we are facing in Africa is to rationalize those different in order to have a clear benefit on that, and then to avoid going through different criteria of accessing or allocating resources. And those are some of the challenges we are facing. Because we have one aspect, development finance, and in other cases we have the climate finance. With climate finance, we need to be some rationalization on that, and to look at also what kind of linkages might exist between the climate finance and development finance. And this is a challenge we have to address to get a benefit of that process, of those different mechanisms in the continent. And that means also at national level, we need to revisit the way the channel and the way we allocate resources.
Okay, so to access the Climate Finance Fund, that means it had to be linked with development and at the same time climate. That's what you're saying?
I think that this will be the best way to address that issue. So far, there is some disconnect between the two, because that is why the all element related to mitigation is disconnected. In adaptation, things are not clear. That is why we need to really work hard in Africa in order to be to get a maximum benefit of those different mechanisms.
One last question. Do you have any message which you want to convey to listeners and to all actors related with this project of the climate?
I think that the key message I have is to get in climate discussion by development first. And that should be the entry point for any African interested in climate issues. Not looking at the climate for climate per se, but looking at it as development first agenda, and how we make our development more climate resilient, and how we make our development more sustainable. It's challenging, but it's doable. And we need to start as soon as possible. The more we delay, the more difficult that will be.
Okay, Mr. Youba Sokona, thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you, and hope that we'll have in the next coming months opportunity to have this kind of dialogue.
Okay, thank you.
You're now tuned in to Behind the Afro Mic. Behind the Afro Mic talks to people from all walks of life. Behind the Afro Mic is brought to you by 105.3 Afro FM, your infotainment station.